better insulation.
If the building project doesn't come off, then we will have to find a way of using that more effectively.
Because my question was, are there plans in place to utilise this space?
Well, the primary plan is to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So if we can't get rid of it, then yes, we'd have to find ways of making use of it. Unless the governors make a decision to say, no, let's just knock it down. But then we would be spending money that we, as it were, don't have to demolish a building, which doesn't seem right, really.
I think the college is well known for making a significant contribution to the environment. We are currently working towards our Green Flag Award. We hope to get that sometime this year, and then move on from there.
I still think there's an awful lot of work for us to do, and I think many of the schemes that we had planned have not come to completion. In part that's because of the way in which government funds colleges, so we've been accustomed to relatively piecemeal injections of funds rather than the kind of overall cash injection that we would need to make the college genuinely sustainable, or moving towards something like carbon neutrality. On the other front, I think that the raising awareness among students and staff has been effective, but there's still a long way to go. You don't have to spend a great deal of time walking around college at almost any time of the day to see the number of rooms where lights are left on, where computers are left turned on. How shall I put it? Even in those rooms that are occupied generally by staff who are themselves very enthusiastic about environmental development, it's quite easy to see that they forget as they leave a room, which is a kind of bugbear, I think, of any public or quasi-public institution. So I think we're doing quite well. But I think the magnitude of the problem that we face is still not as widely understood as I'd like it to be, and I think there's a lot more work to do. We've got a very, very healthy environmental group, strengthened by the fact that the college has for probably 10 years now employed a specific member of staff to act as environmental officer, and she or he have been able to galvanise, actually maybe it's not, but channel the enthusiasms of a lot of the student population and staff.
Some teachers encourage students to be environmentally conscious, turning off computers, stuff like that. But the majority, you walk past at night and you see all the computers on at night time in empty rooms.
Well, because it's not just in relation to students. There are staff in the college who are not interested for whatever reason, and there are even staff who are a bit anti, for different reasons.
What do you do for the environment?
Very little, I'm afraid.
I've met people who are members of staff who are in love with cars, as I was when I was a kid. Every boy's dream, to drive a sports car. When I was a kid, and I've got staff who've talked to me about how much they love motor racing, and they can't, basically if it's the planet or motor racing, it'll have to be the planet, because they just love motor racing so much, and then you get people with sort of more complicated objections, who, I don't know, they're opposed to fair trade because they think, it's their right to drink whatever tea they want to drink, and I don't know, there's people who have intellectual arguments, that, I don't know, and then there are people who don't believe that climate change is a reality.
Why don't you do more?
I think it's a lack of education, knowing how what I'm not doing is going to affect me in the future. Possibly if I knew more of the effects of what I'm not doing, I would change my ways.
How do you think the college could improve that?
Well, I think that possibly that there should be a greater emphasis on the effects that our lives have on the environment, possibly through a lesson or possibly through assemblies or maybe even in tutor sessions. But that's probably the way to do it.
And what do you, if you know anything about what the college does for the environment?
I know very little. Obviously teachers always encourage you to turn computers off, and you're encouraged to separate your litter into recycling and normal stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really know.
My mum makes sure we turn off all the lights, we never leave anything on. The telly, we've got one of those switches on it which cuts out all the electricity if you accidentally do leave it on standby. My brother's not very environmentally conscious. He does leave all his equipment on. I have to go in there and turn it all off quite often. Some teachers encourage students to be environmentally conscious, turning off computers, stuff like that. But the majority, you walk past at night and you see all the computers on at night time in empty rooms. Roy Ashbury is our environmentalist teacher, but he can't do it all by himself. He needs some help from the rest of the teachers. If we had some sort of seminar or something like that to explain what the effects would be having, it would be a lot more helpful, yeah.
Sadly, and with a sense of disappointment, the student union weren't able to get back to me in time for an interview, or to give any comment at all, and therefore couldn't voice their opinion of the college's students. It's a shame, really. And at this point we turn to the hub of knowledge that is the library. Although Jenny didn't want an interview, she did have a few things that she wanted me to say about what she and the library have done to be green. Jenny said that as head librarian, she makes sure that her and the other librarians meet up weekly to discuss what improvements they can bring to the library, as well as making sure that resources are recycled in one way or another on days like World Book Day. And finally, Jenny is also keen as any environment officer to make changes around the college, and she meets with other staff and students to discuss these matters. And she herself has come up with an idea she'd like to sanction of perhaps fining people who litter around college. As Matt said, Roy needs all the help he can get, and so we pass over to him to tell us more.
I'm here to try and promote environmental issues and sort of good behaviour in the college by staff and students. Yeah, it's quite a wide-ranging role because it covers everything from looking at our travel policy, how students and staff come to college, promoting cycling and walking and use of public transport, say recycling, trying to reduce the amount of waste that we produce and so on. From those practical things into the curriculum itself.
Back with Nigel now, who will show us the progression of saving energy through the light bulbs around the college.
Okay, just trying to explain how we try and save some money on our electricity bills at the college. So over the years, technology in fluorescent lamps has changed a lot. This is an old fluorescent lamp, and this would produce, 65 watts, which is a more modern one, but not the most modern. Again, they've reduced it in size and made it more compact. Obviously, there's not so much glass, etc. in the manufacture. And also, same length, this one produces 58 watt. Same length, within an inch or so, this actually produces 80 watt. Other ways, external lights we have on, time clocks or photoelectric cells or passive infrared cells, so they only work when they're needed.
Moving away from the college now and to Basingstoke's climate change officer, Lucy Martins, situated a stone's throw away from the college at the civic offices.
My role involves delivering our climate change strategy. Any information on that can be found on our website. And the main aim of our climate change strategy is to reduce the carbon emissions here in the civic offices and all our operations, so our parks, people and street cleaning and things like that. But it's also to help the borough and the community to cut carbon as well. So we do work with providing training for small businesses, and we do work with communities and getting communities to work together to cut carbon in that area. And what I really like about it as well is you go in, the air feels really fresh. But we're going to have these buildings refurbished soon. They're very stuffy and it's not a nice atmosphere. I think it's very foresighted of QMC to think about doing a building like that, because it can only benefit in the future when energy prices are expensive or we aren't getting energy from overseas and there's power cuts and things.
Now to another glorious insight with Beth Richards, who came to the college for a talk with staff and students about what Hampshire is doing as a whole for climate change. I also managed to blag an interview off her to explain further. I broke down her slideshow for you guys, as Beth covered many topics.
I noticed that you've got lots of old building stock here that possibly hasn't got such a great carbon footprint, so I would assume. But also I know that the People and Planet students, they do things like they're looking towards behaviour change, so people turning the lights off when they're finishing, people not leaving taps running, just little things that can make a difference, and that sort of work is very important. In terms of adaptation, it's something that we're looking at this afternoon in our risk assessment that we're doing for climate change adaptation, and the stuff that's come out this afternoon has been around kind of transport. So if roads are melting because there are much higher temperatures or rails are buckling, then students can't get to the college, staff can't get to the college. If we're looking at, temperatures increasing a great deal towards the end of the century, maybe, June, July is not a sensible time to have exams because it's going to be unbearably hot. So maybe you need to start lobbying for looking at changing exam timetable in the academic year, thing like that.
Yeah. Now for a final word from the principal.
I think we've got so much more to do to keep people constantly aware of the little things that they do that have a cumulative effect across the institution. And so, some of that is about making sure computers are off at appropriate times, and making sure that you manage, if you like, the energy use around the site, in classrooms, workshops, laboratories, etc. And I think we need to probably what we ought to be doing is developing a more robust travel plan for the college. I know Roy is very keen on other aspects of the environment beyond the college site, and I think he needs as much support from college management as possible in driving through, including fair trade, for example, which is not about our footprint directly, although indirectly it probably is. Nothing we can do, even if we stopped now and achieved carbon neutrality across the globe, the next 30 years of global warming are already in place. And I think that's astonishing. That it's not like stopping a motor launch, it's stopping this huge ocean liner that takes miles and miles and miles before it comes to rest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This documentary has been a real shock for me, and I found the process of making my own documentary very exciting and a very insightful experience. However, it's also had a major flip side as well, because it's been exhausting and made me realise that the theory that went into this documentary initially applies now to the college, and that is from the Day the Earth is Still, with John Cleese saying that only at the precipice do we change. And I think this resonates with the college, as with the new buildings and the new boilers that have been put in place, and that really set into motion the changes that need to be made. And I think that we're on the tipping point for great change. And as new technology advances, it will strengthen the amount of environmental policies and issues we can cover as a college in order to reach some kind of carbon neutrality.